when we decided to launch the campaign for a new Workers' Party, it was at a time when very few people outside of our own members would have had any confidence whatsoever that things could change. We understood things would change, both because of the drive of the bourgeois against working class people's living standards, which would mean that workers would become more and more disenchanted by New Labour, which was acting as the handmaiden of that bourgeois offensive against the working class. But we also understood that there would be a sharp change in the economic situation at some stage. The world economy has been living on tick for the last 25 years, but one of the most significant of all features in the world in terms of the economy has been that although there is this huge glut of capital, the capitalists invest less of it proportionately now than they did 30 years ago in industry. And therefore there has been a hollowing out of industry. And instead that capital, that surplus capital that's been swishing around the world, has been invested in stocks and shares, has been invested in the derivatives market, in the futures market, in securitization, in leveraging property sales and the subprime market, in all of these economic instruments the bourgeois have invented to make instant profits. They've turned into junkies who need more and more fixes. But in reality, like a junkie who abuses his or her body so badly, the body gives up at some stage. And what's happening now is the world economy, in terms of the things that really matter, the value-adding parts of the world economy, the machinery, the workers themselves, are being pushed to one side by all these speculative drives that the bourgeois are engaged in. Now, what that means is that the capitalist economy is not in a position to actually recover in the short term without turning its attack in a most devastating way upon working class people. In the recession in Britain, and we've already seen it in Purnell's remarks last week, there will be a huge attempt to drive down the living standards of the unemployed, first of all. The attacks on people claiming incapacity benefits are without precedence since the 1930s. In effect, you will have in Britain unemployed people and people on benefits going through the humiliation of a 21st century equivalent of the means test, as though we don't already have aspects of that, but this will be even worse. And that will be accompanied by, again, a ferocious attack on workers' living standards in the workplaces. Witness the pay restraint this year. And that then will be accompanied by a situation where workers feel poorer than they felt for 2 decades. Not since 1992 has there been a significant recession in Britain. That's a generation ago. Chris is right. People of his and Ray's generation have not got that experience. And even now, the idea of recession, it's being talked about, the R word. A lot of people aren't sure what it means, but they will quickly become clear what it means when they lose their home, or when they lose their job, or when they see their children unable to go to university because the money simply isn't there, even compared to a year ago, to put them through university with all the costs of the fees and so on. And that knock-on effect will be felt in every household. And these are the things that ultimately will drive the idea that there needs to be an alternative. And the party, you know, without being arrogant, should nevertheless blow its own trumpet and say that we made these predictions not because we're clever people, but actually because we analysed and looked at the real processes taking place in the world economy and in Britain. We foresaw where Blairism would end up. We saw what would happen with the invasion of Iraq. We saw that Gordon Brown, from being a purely accidental, lucky chancellor, would become a very unlucky prime minister. Not because of personality flaws, not because he's a Heathcliff character in all the other rubbish that they talk about. You know, those are completely secondary questions, and Anne obviously likes Heathcliff, but that's another issue. The issue really is that Gordon Brown does not have the policies, does not have the capability, and does not have the intellect or the programme to see an alternative way out of this crisis. Gordon Brown will be replaced by Miliband or someone like him, and Steve's absolutely right. Miliband's comments were in a bubble yesterday. The man is a public schoolboy in long pants. That's what Miliband is. I mean, Ralph Miliband, his father, was a Marxist intellectual, a giant compared to the sons he was responsible for bringing into the world. But of course, the Milibands, like Hilary Benn and like all these other, you know, exotic little butterflies that flit around the Parliamentary Labour Party, they are going to be just wiped away. As soon as you get cold weather, butterflies die. And Miliband and Benn and all those people who, you know, exist in this parliamentary hothouse of, you know, Blairism, they're going to be wiped out by this new period. And I think that we've got to keep remembering that. But we've got to get these arguments out, onto the streets, in dialogue. We shouldn't be on any paper sale now just talking about public transport or whatever the issue is we're campaigning on. We should be seeking wherever we possibly can to try and generalise the discussion, to try and present the bigger picture. That picture being that it ain't going to get better. And therefore, you either lock yourself in your house and hope it will all go away, or you determine to be part of the fight back against what is happening to you and your family's living standards. And that, at the end of the day, is what motivates most people to become involved in the first place, isn't it? It's not reading Karl Marx for most people that is the decisive first step. It's understanding that your life is being mucked around with by a system that promised you loads and is now not giving you very much, to put it politely. Anyway, some of the comrades who haven't spoken yet, I don't know if Wayne or Mark or Domenico